Oh,
So
was
I
it?
power it off and on.
Okay.
So don't remember exactly where we were, but we had been on the general topic of um, practicing the Four Noble Truths just in the very beginning. That as the main skill that needs to be developed is the ability to control one's own mind a little bit. And so throwing hindrances out of the mind and putting something useful, wholesome, valuable into the mind is the very basic of training. And that um, when we have, let us say, thoughts about the here now, thoughts about the fact that we can see that the mind has wandered away, and that joy, having those thoughts are the new thoughts that we have, while whatever the thoughts were before are thrown out. We sort of change mental channels from the channel of whatever it was on back to the home base of never mind, start again. All right, that's a phrase from Goenka. All the Goenka students who have taken the course, they know that. That's something that Goenka uses over and over and over again. Sometimes in a droning voice, like "Never mind, start again." And the never mind part is that change of attitude. Like, never mind that that stuff was there. And it makes a major change of attitude in the sense from being a victim of those thoughts. Because we feel like we're victimized. Oh no, there's that monkey mind. Oh, these hindrances are so strong. Okay. So we need to change the attitude. Now, there is a point in time when the attitude is changed to the following, that no matter how obstructed the mind is, no matter how much hindrances, in other words, if you've got a recurring thought that keeps coming back and plaguing, no matter how obstructed the mind is, by with sati, I can remember and I can come out of that and I can come into the here now to see things like they are right now. This is actually almost a quote out of suttas. First, he talks about obstructions, and then he mentions the five hindrances specifically. So it's very clear that the Buddha is talking about when he's here, when he's talking about obstructions, that he's actually talking about the five hindrances. So no matter how these hindrances come in, and they can come in the sense that we think that we can chase them out, and then they come right back. And then we chase them out again. And then we think they're gone, and then they come right back again. All right? And so this is kind of frustrating for students because they're not practicing that gladness, saying that every time it comes back, I can see you. I got you now. Now, here's something very interesting about meditation retreats for some students, especially the Goenka retreats. In the beginning, they think that the mind is wandering away and they don't like it because they can catch it so many times 15 or 5 times, 10 times an hour. But by day 6, now they're catching the mind wandering away 75 or 100 times. And they think that, oh, things are getting really bad now. I thought that I was making progress. Well, you are.
Right.
Why? Because now you're catching it so many more times, so more often. That's real progress. Congratulations. So, this is the way that we want to start catching the mind. As soon as we can catch the mind, we want to gladden. We want to change the contents of the mind and put it into the present moment with a happy kind of, oh, wow, this is so good. I'm so happy to be free from that crap. Out it goes. And so this is the way to get started. Again, to come back to doing that over and over and over again, building joy. Now, in the process of that, you're also doing already, without even me talking about it, you're doing the Mahasi method because you are doing the noting, because the noting in this case was mind full of hindrances, mind
Right.
not full of hindrances.
Right.
And in the real regard, we're also experiencing the mind because we're experiencing the mind instead of hindrance. We're experiencing the mind out of hindrance. We begin to understand that sometimes the mind's really sharp and sometimes it's not. That the mind has various conditions that it's in. And the conditioners for the mind are feelings. And that we've known that, by the way, for forever, at least for the past 10,000 years or so. Here's an example of that. They do not want people to have ad hominem attacks during debates, formal debates, like at a university debate session. Why? Because if you can get your opponent angry, then he'll get confused and discombobulated. He'll lose his mind, literally. Sharp as attack until you attack him. The same thing is true with actual combat sports. That if you can get your opponent angry, then you'll probably beat him.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a clear head. So this is a quality of seeing that feelings condition the mind. Well, it's also true that the mind can condition the feelings then if we can control the mind enough to gladden the mind and make it bright and sharp and happy in that point of success. When we can see that the mind has wandered away from the breath, that will begin to affect the way that we feel, so that then we can begin to deal with feelings. And as we begin to deal with feelings and get to the deep nature of the feelings, we find under that is an underlying tendency to the conceit of I am. And below that, I would say, would be the self-preservation instinct. Now, that self-preservation instinct was developed over millions of years throughout all kinds of species of animals, mostly mammals and now primates, in dangerous times, when every animal was in danger. Now we have a society where almost nobody's in danger ever. And yet people feel like that they're in danger a lot. I just saw a video, by the way, of a woman who had just spent about 3 years in Europe traveling around, and she's come back to the United States, and she finds that it's almost a foreign landscape, that over time she was able to dish her fear because nobody in Europe is full of fear. She goes back to the United States, and everybody is paranoid. Everybody is filled with fear in the United States. Fear of Trump, fear of non-Trump,
Right.
fear of politics, fear of whites fearing blacks, blacks fearing whites, blacks
Right.
fearing the police. Oh, it goes on and on and on and on. And I think a lot of it has to do with that Second Amendment. Everybody is armed to the teeth, at least the Republicans.
It has been getting so bad with just the identity politics, and everyone's afraid. It's unbelievable. Like just the last few years, especially, it's just been it's unfortunate.
Yes, it's on a curve.
Mm-hmm.
It just goes up and up. So your job then, if you can learn to do one thing with the mind, which is that skill of gladdening the mind. If you can gladden the mind, then you can start to manage feelings. Eventually, you'll get right down to the root of all of those fears so that you can live a life that's fearless. Life free from suffering. And it really has to do with nothing more than a right attitude. But that right attitude requires a right view. And it requires the skill development, because we didn't develop those skills when we were very young children. I don't think it's possible to teach these skills to a young child, but we can teach them a few things like generosity and gratitude and that kind of stuff, which will be excellent tools that they can use when they start to study their own mind. Um, I know that some people tell children, "Oh, we're going to meditate," and everybody sit down, and the kids learn to sit still, but I don't think that they learn to develop joy. And that's the main skill that needs to be developed. Now, if you can see that, you can recognize that this is actually quite a motivator for any student, even you. That if you can say, "Oh, if I go and my intention right now is to be joyful at the best of my capability right this very moment," then that will be the next step that you need to do the next one so that it can go and grow as your skill develops. But if you become dissatisfied with your progress, then you'll stop, or in fact are not making progress. So being satisfied with the progress that you're making is actually progress.
Right.
We have to become satisfied with it. Now, the next point, and by the way, next time what we'll do is we'll do more of Anapanasati in depth, as well as the Satipatthana that goes along with it, because you do have the body, and I've been talking about it already in the sense of feelings and body and hindrances of the mind, which are objects of the mind, and the body. So we've actually already been talking about the Satipatthana, right. But we'll do so more formally next time. But what we can talk about today is the motivation that you need to get started back in practice so that you can start getting some benefit from it immediately. Because the real intention here is to not have wonderful or marvelous experiences.
Right.
In fact, the marvelous experience that you had brought up fear, and you didn't have the skill to say, "Oh, wow, look at that."
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the skill that needs to be developed. This idea of brightening the mind, gladdening the mind, bringing success in, throwing failure out. And you could also go too far to talk about it in the sense of an attitude of coming out of the attitude of the victim into the attitude of the winner or the successful one who's not a victim. A kind of "I'm okay, you're okay." Have you ever heard of the OK Corral?
No.
There's four of them. This comes from Eric Berne. He wrote a book on. The book is called or named "I'm Okay, You're Okay." But basically, everyone has four possible life positions. One of them is the position of the victim, which is, "I'm not okay, but the world is kind of okay." The second one is, "I'm not okay, and the world is also not okay." This leads to a lot of suffering, a lot of try hard, etc., like that. The next one is the position of, "I'm okay, but the world or you are not okay." And that's what leads to, at its worst, megalomania. But that's the position of the CEOs. That's the one who, "I want to run the show. I'm the big dude here, and I can want to make money off of that piece of crap over there called the world." Okay, so that's that position. But the real position that we're shooting for is, "I'm okay, you're okay." That everything is copacetic. The world is just fine. World not need to be fixed.
Right.
And in fact, the world, if it needs to be fixed, it's because there's already so many people who had that attitude out there fixing it. Each one of them tinkering on this fine-tuned device, and they're not coordinating with each other.
Right.
You can imagine like a wagon stuck in a creek, and that a whole bunch of people come to push the wagon out of the creek, but they're not getting anywhere because everybody is just putting a hand on the wagon wherever they can, and so the whole wagon's surrounded by people pushing on it. And the best they can do is destroy the wagon.
Yeah.
So much for politics, huh?
Yeah. That's the other thing is I didn't care about politics forever, and then I came into it thinking I could like find some nuanced, have some like nuanced opinion or see something that someone else wasn't seeing, and it drove me crazy, and I stopped. like, yeah, it's it's pushing a cart. Yeah, pushing the wagon around in the creek. It's exactly it.
Yes, when you recognize that that's what the world is really all about, is everybody's been told they've got to go to work. And so everybody's out there saying, now we need this wagon out of the ditch. And everybody's got their own ideas about how to do that. And the next thing you know, you've got a ton of people all pushing on that wagon, each one in their own direction. But the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Catholic Church, the evangelicals, you name the group, and that's the wagon that's stuck in the ditch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's better just to leave all of that alone.
Right.
That, in fact, is the second fetter, the Silabata Paramasa, which is that humans become attached to rites, rules, and rituals, and that it goes very, very deep, right down to the instinctual level. What instinctual level? It's the nesting instinct. That herds, when they nest at night together, bunched up. Monkeys will build a nest. Wolves will dig a pit, and they'll nest there together. So our whole idea of nesting instinct is the most deepest cooperation that humans have, because it comes way out of our past, out of our deep, deep past, long before we were human. And that one thing that's sure about a nest is that it's got to have some cooperation. Otherwise, the nest is not safe. The whole quality of the nest is that it's a safe place, which means those people who are in the nest have to be in a state of cooperation with each other. So in that regard, now what's happened in modern society is the whole planet Earth is the nest for humans, and human society is the set of nest rules. Now here's the problem. It doesn't matter what rules the nest have, the rules are not going to eliminate suffering. All they're going to do is eliminate a little bit of it, but it's not going to get rid of it. So you can think of, in the sense of right view, is wrong view is no rules. And right view, ordinary right view, is the rules that society needs in order to operate, but in that you always have grasping and clinging and wanting results and all of that kind of stuff. But the supramundane right view, which is that view of I'm okay, you're okay, sees that there is no work that needs to be done. There's a beautiful Zen koan that I like so much that really reflects that, and that is that no place to go and nothing to do, and the spring comes and the grass grows by itself. This is a haiku piece. Mm-hmm. Busho is, I think, the author of it. So that's the way that we want to start living our lives, is that the grass grows by itself. Doesn't need my cooperation or my effort. So the seasons come and go on their own. And we can just sit here and enjoy our lives. No place to go and nothing to do, and I'm just perfectly content. This is a skill to be developed. This is not going to be because of some sort of magical experience that you had and it's a big wake-up. All right. Eckhart Tolle probably is not quite fully aware of how much training he had to go through for him to come back to understanding his quality of this present moment. He had to remind himself over and over and over and over again, probably 100,000 times, to come back to this present moment before he finally stopped leaving this present moment in order to have to come back to it. But he doesn't know, and he says that he doesn't know. But when people ask him to teach, he teaches Buddhism. Because what he did for himself, he couldn't describe it. So the Buddha's teaching is the way that we want to look at it from this perspective, is that it's a system of development that leads us to a state where we can be joyful, centered, relaxed, cool, and enjoy that state quite often.
Right.
Moment by moment. So that's if there is a goal. But really what happens is that most of the goal setting and goal arrival have to do with arriving to the state of the fruit of Sotapan. Because once someone reaches the state of the fruit of Sotapan, the fruit is there, the joy in the Dhamma is there. And so the dedication to the path is really strong, but the effort has turned into an energy. So that it's right effort, truly right effort, which means that it's really easy. Really easy, for instance, to be on guard because we've been training to be on guard. And so part of the fruits of the Sotapan is the fruits of the effort of the practice of the skills that we've been talking about, which is right view, right attitude, right effort, and most importantly at this stage, right sati, to keep remembering to come back. That's the big one. If we can continue to remember. So that's the skill that you want to develop, and you can start thinking about developing that skill whether you're sitting on the cushion or not.
Right.
Is to remember to wake up, to keep waking up over and over and over again. And as you do wake up, you wake up with full satisfaction. I've just woken up. So this is the motivation that I give you as a gift. Go enjoy your meditations. That's the skill that is to be developed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that seems like the way to go.
And you can see that maybe that was part of what was missing in the way that you were practicing before.
Absolutely. I mean that it is, and because I've noticed that there, it's also technical and all this, like, trying to notice everything and not really enjoy. It's like too much analyzing and not enough just enjoying. And I think that's why I think that's I had a recent insight, and a shift, I guess you would say, and it was just like, yeah, there was something missing, and I think this is the direction that I need to be looking. So
good. You can also begin to see that the other way that you were practicing, even though you were practicing according to Asian teachers teaching an Asian system, you were still practicing it Western style.
Right.
Expecting results.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now you can recognize that you put in years of practice as a drummer, and that most of that time, or much of that time, you liked it. You liked playing the drums. You had to have had. You wouldn't have kept doing it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so you enjoyed playing the drums. Enjoy your meditation or you won't do it.
Right. Will do.
Now, I didn't enjoy every minute of piano practice, but I enjoyed it enough. And if I knew then what I know now, I would have enjoyed it a whole lot more.
Right.
And I might have been a better musician to boot.
Yeah. I hear that. All right. Well, I think that's probably a good place to stop for now. But yeah.
Well, Nick, give me a call after you've done several days of this, adding this one little ingredient. You can actually think of it as salt. Just put this little bit of salt on the food that you've already been eating, and recognize that, that's what we need to develop. We need to develop that joy, gladdening the mind, making it bright.
Right.
And that success is the important ingredient with that. In fact, there's a whole long list of words, and I'll give it to you, but we'll talk about them later. This comes from the Pali word of idia, in the sense of idiopada. The bases or idiopada are actually these four things that we've been talking about: right noble view, right noble, and they talk about it in there in the sense of right investigation, but always right sati and right effort are there to give you the right attitude. So when we develop those things, here's the quality or the powers themselves. The powers are the feeling of success, the feeling of satisfaction, the feeling of contentment, the feeling of safety and security. These are the powers, and one more added to that is the feeling of wealth, to being satisfied in a kind of a wealthy way. And there's many ways that we'll discuss that, but this is the powers that you should be developing as you're developing that one skill of gladdening the mind. That gladdening the mind because you're successful. Because here's the sati. No sati, no skill development.
All right.
Okay. And you can also say that what I've been teaching today is not really different from what Culadasa teaches.
Right.
But you have to read the end of the book to get to the beginning.
Right. I think it can all be so much more. It can be all so much more simple. And I think it
really is. Right down to the point that the Buddha teaches only one thing: Dukkha, Nirodha. It's that simple. Everything the Buddha teaches can be held in your hand.
Right.
In fact, there's a whole, the name of the sutta is the Simba Sutta because of the Simba forest, but that's the story that gives rise to the concept of the handful of leaves, which is one of the publications, I think, in Sri Lanka. But you probably heard about that before, that the Buddha only teaches a handful of things, just a handful. Now, for the beginning student, that's quite a handful.
Right. Yeah.
But as we go by, we can recognize, no, it's just, that's all there is to it. It's just suffering and no suffering. Come out of your suffering right this very minute. The suffering was the hindrances. The suffering was the inattention. The suffering was the asleepness. Wake up right now and come out of that suffering right now. That's what it's about.
Right.
And you keep doing that over and over and over and over again. And what you do is you start digging down to see some of that deeper crap because you've got a mind that's been trained to be able to do that.
Right. Alrighty. Well,
excellent.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We'll see you.
All
see
right.
you in about a week or maybe a few days, up to you.
All right, cool. I'll call in. All right.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.